Good afternoon and welcome to K2's Road to Excellence Part 17 and our partner account tech. As I woke up this morning, we had 15 centimeters of snow, so I guess this is our first winter webinar. Fortunately, I'm nice to Nancy and our snow plowing service woke me up in the middle of the night, but we had a clean driveway this morning. So let's get started. A little bit of admin before we get going. My good friend Marilyn Benninger is backing me up today, and she is your go-to person for technical issues and for questions, and I'll get to questions in a minute. Your microphones are muted for obvious reasons. You're welcome to take notes, but be aware that within 10 days of today, Marilyn will be sending you a package, and in that package will be the webinar recording, my teaching notes, my teaching files, the answers to any of the questions, and your CPD certificate. So questions you ask in the chat window. At the end of the webinar, Marilyn will send the questions to Scott Archer and myself. We will answer them, and the questions and answers will be in your package. When it comes to CPD certificates, if you're new to the webinar, 4 times this afternoon, Marilyn is going to stop Scott and myself and put up a polling question. These are multiple choice questions. You don't have to get the answer right, but you do have to click on one of the answers and click on submit so we can attest to your attendance. So on that note, I'm ready to get started. And the topic of today is power printing. And I suspect that some of my friends on the line are thinking, aren't we moving into the paperless world? Of course. However, be aware that when you create a PDF, you are de facto printing, and all of the rules and tips that work with printing to paper also work with PDFs. So on that note, Marilyn, it's time for the first poll.
Wonderful. Good morning or afternoon, folks, wherever you are today. Your screen should change and it should be blue now, asking you the question, when you're printing to paper or a PDF, do you know how to do the following? You get to choose more than one. Can you fit to one page with 0 pages tall? Can you maximize the amount of data that will print on a page? Can you select non-contiguous ranges to print in a report? Can you use the camera icon to produce custom reports? Or if you're like me, I'm probably going to be selecting none of the above. That's why we're here today for Alan's excellent teachings. We hold our polls open until we see 90%, and we're just right there. Thank you for your responses. I'll be counting you down from 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. I'll be closing the poll, and I'm sharing the results with you now, Alan.
Interesting. So let's get started. I'm going to call up my first sample file here, and I'll use it just for a review. So there's nothing magic about this. It's a set of financial statements. You're currently looking at the balance sheet. So a starting point is, of course, we go to the page layout tab, and we got a bunch of things here, margins and orientation. And I'm not going to review those. They're pretty simple. When we get to margins, though, we've got a bunch of choices: last custom setting, normal, wide, narrow, and so on. And this is peculiar to me, and Marilyn will agree that I'm peculiar. I don't use the margin settings here. I go down here to the arrow, and I click on it. And this gives me this window here. And I can do a lot of things in the window. So let's start with margins. So here's the default, 1.9, 2.5, and so on. I'm going to do this. I'm going to change it to that and that. I'd love to ask the question if anybody else does that. And you're thinking, that's kind of dumb. I don't want to print to the outside edge. And you won't. Every printer that I have worked with has a certain space on the left and right hand side, normally 1/2 inch. And that's the space where the grab bars grab the paper and roll it around the drum where it's printed. And you can't print on those outside spaces. So let's assume that you've done this. You've said, all right, let's do that, and let's do that. So how far in from the left margin is it going to print? 1 inch, half an inch for your margin, and half an inch for the grab bars. So here's a tip that I do all the time, and that works regardless of whether it's a PDF or print to paper. And if we go to print preview, there we go. Next, we can play around with the print area. So I'm going to do this. I'm just going to highlight down here. And I'm going to go to the page layout. I'm going to go to the print area, and I'm going to set the print area. And then I'm going to go down here in the bottom right-hand corner and click on Page Break Preview. And notice what it's going to print. Just that, if I go to File, Print, and notice what I've got here. Adobe, print the active sheets. And the choices here on every printer that I've worked with is print the active sheets, print the entire workbook, print the selection, which is that. However, I can go beyond that. So we're going to come back. I'm going down here in the bottom right-hand corner and click on the normal view. And now I'm going to say, I just want the current assets plus this. So what am I going to do? I'm going to go to the print area, and I'm going to go to Add Print Area. Now watch what happens when I go down and look at the Page Break Preview. It's only going to print those. Now that works well, but before we're done this morning, I'm going to have what I think is a better way, so stand by for that. Let's come back and get our normal view. Let's go back up at the top. And again, let's click on here. And let's go to the page and come down here into scaling. So I could play with the scaling, adjust to 100%, 90%, and so on. Or I can go down here, fit to 1 page wide by 1 page tall. And in most cases, it will print beautifully on 1 page, and I will need a high-powered magnifying glass to see the results. Now, I asked this question in the polling question, and that is, I can change the number of pages here, so I can print to 1 page wide, and let's say 8 pages tall. The problem with doing that is it's too much work, because I've got to go scroll down here. As a matter of fact, I've got to go here to here, Page Break Preview, and see where the page breaks come from. So instead of doing that, and I'm just going to take a second to clear the page break print area, I'm going to go here. Instead of having to count the pages and then enter the number, I'm going to enter that. Notice I put a 0 in there. So what's going to happen when you do that? Well, Excel is going to do the work for you. It's going to print the first page. If there's a second page, it'll print the second page, and so on. So there's a great time saver. When it comes to headers or footers, notice what I've got. I do not have a header. I could go and do a custom header. I do have a custom footer, and by the way, this is not a real company. And notes. So what else do I do here? Well, I'm going to go to print titles. And notice rows to repeat at the top. $1:5 $5. What that's going to do is print rows 1 to 5 at the top of every page. And then I could play here. I could do black and white, draft quality, and so on. And then down here in the page order, it will print all of the pages going down, and then it'll move over and print all of the pages to the right, and so on. And that's pretty well the basics of my print settings. So let's move on to one of my favorite tools, and that is this. Notice that I have a report here. Assumptions, estimated cost, after tax cost of capital. The assumptions are coming from here. The cost of capital is coming from here. The cost of power is coming from here. And when I'm done, I get this. Now, you all know one way to do that, and that would be copy and paste. But there is a better way. Up here in my quick access toolbar, right here, I have Excel's camera. And I'd love to ask a question. Well, I know what the answer is. Only 4% of you have the camera here because only 4% of you have used the camera to create custom reports. Just a quick way of getting that. We need to customize the quick access toolbar. And of course, Microsoft gives us some popular commands, which aren't popular for most accountants. So I'm going to go here to all commands and quickly slide down here in the C's to the camera. And I would click on it, or you need to click on it, and you need to click on add. I've already done that. So how does the camera work? Well, let's insert a new sheet and let's go to work. So I'm going to go to here. And you notice I've selected all of the assumptions. So instead of doing Control C, I'm going to go up here and click on the camera. And you'll notice that my mouse pointer changes to a plus. So I'm going to go to my new sheet, and anywhere in the grid, I'm going to hold down my left mouse button and drag a bit. Well, that's magic. So let's do the same thing with the cost of capitals. I'm going to click on the camera. I'm going to go back here and over here. And then for the cost of power, I'm going to click on the camera and go here. And I know that some of you are probably thinking, what's the big deal? I could have done that by doing a copy paste. And you're right. Here's the big deal. I'm going to go here and change this number to 80 million and hit enter. Now watch what happens when I go back here. Wow. So using the camera, we're creating dynamic reports. So as the underlying data changes, my dashboard will automatically update. So what happens if I don't feel like going to the agent model? I just click, and now I'm back in there and I can make modifications. Same thing here. So the camera, I think, is a brilliant way to create custom reports. Far better, in my opinion, than going to page layout and going to the print area and setting multiple print areas. Because when I do this, it's only going to print it. When I do this, it'll be dynamic. So that's a big one for me when it comes to printing. And the last thing that I want to do today, as a matter of fact, is custom views. Now, the background for this is kind of interesting. You'll notice that when I come over here, there's a whole bunch of rows hidden. And notice it started at 2014. The original started way back in 1990, and it was a 50-year project, and it was done by a partner of mine, Mac McClellan, who's both a CPA and a lawyer, and he's never practiced law. And in the 1990s, he was the project manager for the Opuhu Dam, which is in the North Island of New Zealand. And he used this spreadsheet basically as his game plan. Now, I have no need for this data. So a standard way of dealing with that would be to hide it. Then I got to unhide it. But a much better way is to use custom views in the View tab. So I go over here and I don't have any custom views because I'm going to add one. So my starting point with any spreadsheet when I'm doing custom views is to highlight the whole thing and go up here to custom views and add one. And I'm going to call it master. Okay. Now that I've done that, at the moment, I'm working in (2019, 2020). So I'm going to hide those cells. Now, that's fine, but if I need to go back and see the whole thing, once again, I've got to go here and do an unhide. Instead of that, I'm going to create another custom view. So we'll go to custom view and we'll go to add and we'll call this Marilyn in her honor and click. All right, so after the webinar, I want to go back, but I don't want to work on this. I want to see the whole thing. Piece of cake. Custom view, master, show. Later on this afternoon, I want to go to view, custom view, and I want to see Maryland. And you can have an unlimited number of custom views. So for example, on this one, again, I'm only working here. And here. There we go. So we'll call this a custom view. And I'm going to call this in my good friend Ray Desjardins' name. So we'll just put Ray. And now when we go to custom views, look at what we've got. Show. There we go. Show. And by the way, this is another way of setting print settings. I create a custom view and I go down to the page break preview. And there we go. So before I close, I want to go back here to a file that I used before, and that's this one. And just cover one last thing that I forgot to do here. I'm going to go to page break preview and notice what I've got. I've got the blue line, and that shows me the right-hand edge of how it will print. I've got a dash line here, so it's going to page break between related practice and accrued expenses. I don't want that. Notice the vertical arrow? I'm just going to go up here. And now I've created a custom break. But what happens if I don't like that? Well, then I'll go to the break here and reset all page breaks. What else could I cover here? Notice that I have a page of notes here. And once again, let's look at page break preview. Well, that one's fine. Whoops, I don't like that one. So we'll come down here. We might have to change how it prints. And there we go. And notice up at the top, and this is a note that I put in here, all of these rows here repeat at the top of each page. So on that note, Marilyn, I think I'm done. So let's put up the final poll for me, please.
Absolutely, Alan. Lots of great new things there and reinforcement of some things I forgot that I knew. So, folks, this is your second of 4 poll questions. We need you to answer at least 3 of the 4 in order to gain your 1 verified CPD credit. Your question is, when you're working with charts, do you know how to do the following? Create a trend chart, work with spark lines, create a thermometer chart, a pivot table chart, or none of the above.
And my spelling leaves something to be desired.
That's quite all right. I think you're forgiven. We're already at 90%. I'm going to be closing the poll now in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. I'm closing the poll, and let's just share those results with everyone.
I look forward to being with you in 2 weeks and covering this. And by the way, for those of you that have created a trend chart, we have just finished the accounting technology tour for the 27th year. And I build a trend chart, and it starts when we start registration, and it ends with the last registration. And by the middle of May, it was forecasting that we would have just over 1,500 registrations. And guess what we had? Just, was it over 15 or over 14, Marilyn?
Over 1,500.
Yeah. And it's amazing how close that came. So that's a tease. So it's now time to let my good friend Scott Archer at Account Tech take over the webinar.
Right, Scott, I'm just handing over to you.
Great. Thank you, Marilyn. Thank you, Alan. That was some excellent tips with Excel. I learned a few tricks that I had no idea about. Great tip on the camera. That was very nice. So let's get started. I'm going to share my screen here. We'll get started here. Okay, so we're here to talk about today, from my point of view, the connected accounting and ERP software. We are, or I am, Scott Archer. I'm the presenter for Account Tech today. I'm a product specialist. I've been working with Connected for over 20 years, so I've got a bit of history with the program. We are from the company Account Tech Solutions, and the product is Connected Accounting and ERP. Often we get that mixed up. People call it the Account Tech software or the Connected Company or so on and so forth. So that's just the way that we kind of define it, the connected accounting and the ERP software by Account Tech. So we're going to cover a few topics today. Connected is a vast program. We're just going to discuss a little bit about what it is, and then we're going to kind of focus on some of the inventory aspects of the program, pricing methods, order entry, and if we have time, we'll do a quick just example with some of those previous examples on a reporting with a sales versus cost matching for margins. So what is Connected? Connected it's a program or accounting and ERP application for small to mid-sized businesses. It's not for large enterprises. It's for the smaller to mid-size that are usually growing out of that, as some folks call it, the entry-level stage of the business or entry-level program of the business. So whether they're using a QuickBooks, a Sage 50, and they've got a whole bunch of spreadsheets that are doing certain things that those programs may not do or may not do for their unique needs, that's kind of where we come in and fit into the chain. We have a few multi-items here, so we're multi-user, multi-currency, and of course, multi-location for inventory, which is something we're going to discuss today. Our typical customers are usually established businesses. They're businesses that are in the B2B space, maybe a distribution, a wholesaler, a light manufacturer, somebody that's not in a retail type of operation. So obviously not a grocery store. And in some cases, a company that does e-commerce, because they could be deemed as retail as well as if they're selling directly to customers. The program includes a full set of financial accounting, your accounts payable, receivables, financial statements, etc. Obviously, we're going to talk a bit about the inventory. We have, of course, manufacturing and job costing, and there's much more in there as well, but those are just the broad strokes. We have solutions that can be specific for specific areas of, specific markets, so to speak, for wholesale, distribution, and manufacturing. A little bit about the system info, and this kind of relates to stuff that Alan talked about, because these things kind of relate potentially to your use of Excel and or data mining that you might do from our application. Connected is a 64-bit program, and it can work on a PC desktop or a Mac OS desktop. We have desktop software, or we have a hosted cloud, which is now offered as a pure SaaS model. Specifically to Alan's area of expertise, we can work with a 32 or a 64-bit version of Microsoft Office. And a few years ago, if you ever installed a 64-bit version of Office, you might have some collisions with certain applications. So once we were able to move to 64-bit, we're able to utilize that power. That goes hand in hand with the next point, is if you are mining data or extracting data with like an automatic technique such as ODBC or ODBC to Microsoft Power BI, you can utilize the power of 64-bit, which is just going to give you more processing power and draw the data out and process it quicker. We do also export for caseware, and if you have a new tablet, a Surface, or depending on your laptop, it could have an ultra high definition display. That's UHD, and a Retina display on a Mac, which has been there for years. Connected is going to show crystal clear on that display. So us folks that look at screens all day and look at numbers and accounting, it's really nice to see something in crystal clear resolution. So that's going to move us to the inventory. And we're going to kind of focus a little bit on the inventory / order entry as it goes. So Connected, aside from the full accounting suite that it has, is a full real-time inventory system. So although Connected is a posting, sometimes people refer to that as a batch system, although we don't use batch numbers. Inventory is all real-time. Inventory is committed, it's locked, statuses are updated, always in real time as things happen. We support 3 costing methods, I guess 2 with one being a branch from the second. We do weighted average, FIFO, which for those of you that don't know is first in, first out, and specific costing, which is based on FIFO, and that really comes into play when we're talking about lot and serial control. Connected supports a multi-level bill of materials for manufacturing. And the manufacturing process in Connected is not a one and done. So it's not basically build it and click a button and it's done and then you have the product. It's meant to potentially be a little bit of a longer process with a more detailed bill of materials where you can make inventory commitments before you actually execute a build. So it's a little bit different than that one and done concept where you either build it or you don't. You can have many open manufacturers that are sitting there that are in progress, so to speak, as you get along and move through your production. We handle multiple locations for inventory. You can easily see stock status, availability, what's on purchase order, what's on customer order by named location. Those could be a location that's a physical location, so a different office in a different location, or sometimes people will use what I term as a virtual location, where they might set aside inventory into quarantine, for example, until it passes an inspection. Or they might take goods that have been returned that can't be resold and isolate them into a location designated for that. Being in Canada, we are definitely dealing with landed cost tracking on inventory. So that's when we're talking currency conversions, freight and duty additions to your inventory costs, so that when we bring in inventory in a foreign currency, more often than not US dollars, we're able to track the currency conversion and those other factors to value our inventory as accurately as we can, knowing the variability that comes with those, and put it into a proper Canadian cost. So that's a little bit about the inventory. Now, when we talk about selling inventory, we really need to understand some of the pricing mechanisms that we have. So Connected has a wide range of options to use to price your inventory, and they can be used as a separate option, or they can be all used together because they have a hierarchy. Now, my slide here starts at the top with the selling price, but really that's the bottom. But we put it at the top because it's the highest price. So selling price is your list price. Everything there typically goes down, and if it goes up, well, that's great because you're selling it higher than your list price. So just to touch quickly on these mechanisms, we have a price matrix, which is designed for volume pricing and discounts. You can do global recalculations based on current cost, vendor inventory. So you could take a subset of your items and say, let's do a 10% markup on the cost or on the selling price based on the current cost because your vendors updated their prices. You can also put in pricing levels and assign them to customers. The benefit of the price matrix is if it fits, it's the simplest to manage and it's the easiest to update because of the global recalculation that you can do within the system. If you're looking for something a little bit more specific, shall we say, we have a price table. A price table is like a price list. A price list, maybe you have a wholesale list price that you assign to a group of customers. So essentially it's just a list of products and the specific price that is being paid for them. And if that price table is used, it takes precedence over your pricing matrix. So it takes over if the product is in both. And then we have what we call a customer price list. So this is linked directly to a customer and is a list of products and the prices that the customer pays for them. In turn, they can have expiry dates on that, and they can have a date that it's valid from and to. But something else that happens when you use a customer price list is that you can also assign customer part numbers. If their part number is different than your part number, and they need to see that number to pay your invoice or to identify the product, then having that in your table as well as presented on your packing slip or your invoice can be helpful. Not only that, but when you set up a customer's price list, you will get a list that's a subset that just shows those products when you're doing data entry. So for example, if you have 5,000 SKUs of inventory, but you have a customer that buys 20 specific products and that's all they buy, maybe because of a contract that you've entered with them, when you're doing the data entry for that customer, you can easily just click a tab on the list and just show those products. Makes data entry a lot easier, speeds things up, and reduces errors. And then of course at the very end, you can top these all off by adding a straight up customer discount. If you just want to discount any one of those prices further, you can add a percentage there. So that's a little bit of a pricing for the inventory. This is something that we find folks that are interested in our product are very keen on. So it's something we try to explain. It's quite complicated, but we want to make sure that you as an accountant or somebody that's working with a business can understand those different options or at least have an idea about them. So that brings us to order entry. Order entry in Connected is pretty detailed. It's one of the strong points of our program. It's something that a lot of entry-level programs have shortcomings, usually in back order tracking and maybe printing specific forms and so on and so forth. So Connected orders can be entered for today or in the future because you can put in a date within reason. It can't be dated, too far into the future, but you can enter it now or into the future, and you can have required dates on the order. So you can have a required date for the entire order, or as what I'll show you when I do some specific examples with the program, you can use a line item required date for a blanket order. So you can have items that are repeating on the order but have different required or sometimes release dates. Those dates are useful because we can do a comparison on the required date and the invoice date. How quickly did we ship this order based on what the customer asked for? Did we meet, they asked for it on this day, we shipped it on this day, what's the difference? And we can do an analysis on that. That's something our customers do quite often. So that's a feature they like, being able to see those two dates and line them up and do a comparison. With order entry, we also go to a field level security for certain fields that would be of important to certain people: price, discount, terms, tax, and rep. Those can all be optionally enabled or disabled by a user. So you can enforce pricing and discounts, as we just talked about in the previous slide, by blocking those fields off, whereas a manager can edit those if they need to. You can save somebody from changing the terms, which could increase a credit limit or extend the terms to a customer that they shouldn't, by just blocking the field off. It's still visible, but they can't edit the field. And then another popular feature with our customers is when we have many users entering things at the same time, checking for duplicate POs by customer. So Connected will warn you that you've already entered that PO for that customer, and you don't enter it twice, you don't ship it twice, and it can save a lot of confusion and extra expense from making a mistake. And then just to continue on with the order entry discussion, we have metrics for orders where you can see what the back order totals are, the percentages, the quantities, what do you have committed, ready to ship, but you haven't actually released it. You can see those within an order or in a list of orders showing you the totals and percentages for the entire set of open orders. Because we do full back order tracking, you can have many shipments against an order. The order number ties everything together. So when you ship an order, you're going to generate a packing slip and a new invoice number, except the order number is going to remain the same. And that order number can tie everything together. And I'm pretty sure I'll have time. I'll be able to show you just a quick report on how easily that's done. And it's very useful because it gives you the specific cost, and it can show you the profitability of an order that has multiple invoices. So some of you may have experience with the, I can't do back orders, I have to duplicate the order and put a -1 or -A or something, so I don't really keep the integrity of the original, and then I have to do a duplicate, and then that is my quote-unquote back order. We can have a relationship with manufacturing from order. So if you are a make-to-order business, sometimes that might be a job shop, but if you only produce based on a customer's order, you can directly drive production right from the order by requesting it. It relates the production to the order, you can build it, and then you can relate back and go to that order. And if you're using one of the specific costing methods, you can link specific production cost and inventory to that order by using a lot or a serial number. And then just very quickly, sales orders produce a few documents. Some people call them different things. Some people do, use them or don't use them. They might be internal, they might be external, they might be sent to clients via email. So we can do confirmations, acknowledgements. Those are common for clients to email out just to say, hey, just want to confirm that this order for $100,000 is correct before we actually produce and or ship it. So that would be maybe a confirmation or an acknowledgement. I've seen both of those titles. They seem to be synonymous. Of course, if we're a pick and pack operation, we might need a picking list, where to go in our, what bin, what to pick, how much is available, so on and so forth. Packing slips, those can be sometimes used as picking lists, because they can have more information on them sometimes that is relevant for picking. And we can print a pre-ship packing slip that will show you what you need to pick, or with the shipment packing slip, which is ultimately based on an invoice. Oftentimes our customers might use these for complex labels that include barcodes and certain identifications that their customers need on the shipment, because all the order data and inventory data can be collected on that form. And then, of course, when we ship an order, we get to an invoice, and then that produces an invoice to the customer that we may email them, whether individually or in a batch. And, of course, then we can get paid from that. So with that said, I'm going to shift over, and I'm going to show a little bit about the connected program here. So we're going to try to tie some of these things together very quickly in this short time. So just a moment, we're going to switch the view here. So that's going to switch the view. I've brought up the connected accounting program. I'm showing our connected desktop. It has all the modules opened up, although we don't sell this in a modulated system. It is, you use what you need to use, and if you need to turn something on, you're of course more than welcome to. So this is the inventory control tab of the connected desktop. And what I'm first going to do is I'm just going to open up what we call our inventory item query window. And this is one of our most popular windows because of all the flexibility that you can use with it. So I'm going to open that up, and I'm just going to move my WebEx panel to the other side. And when we open this up, we get a view. So this is a view that I've preset called All Inventory. So this is a view that I've done, and it's there, and it's just listing all the inventory items. This is a window that I can edit, I can customize columns, I can add pieces of data, I can reorder, and of course I can sort and drill into it. If I chose to export this, it's going to come out exactly the way that I had it here. So for those of you using Excel for external analysis, there's nothing better than getting a nice piece of data with a header row that has everything lined up so that if you want to do some manipulation, it's easy to do. And therefore you can do sorting, subtotaling, and all the wonderful things that Alan mentioned that we wish we could do, but that's a great way to start with a nice clean piece of data. So I'm going to change you to one that I've set up on purpose. So I'm going to click Action here, and I'm going to change this view to what I call a restocking view. So when I click on that, it loads a different view for my user. These are views that I've saved for myself. So I've created a simple view here just for the purposes of this demonstration. And I'm just trying to move my little GoToMeeting panel out of my way here. That's better. So this is the view that I created, and we can see we have POs and SOs and available and minimum and reorder quantities for each inventory line item. I can also see that I have the vendor sitting there, and I can identify which vendor is for the item, whether it's controlled by lot number, uncontrolled. I don't have any serialized items here, but these are just columns that I've put up for this view. So basically, in this, I'm going to do a restocking. I could filter the data further by introducing additional quantity filters, but just for the sake of showing how this works, I'm not going to filter it down, but I could and say, all data that's below the minimum stock, for example, and then show how that looks. So for example, if I went like this and save that filter, I get it down to 4 items. But for the purposes of doing this, I'm just going to flip it back to is any amount. And then I'm going to do a PO generation. So before I do a PO generation, Connected supports multiple locations of items. I'm only looking at one on purpose at the top. I have it set to 1-to-1, so my primary location. And we support multiple vendors per item. These are relevant when we do a PO generation. So I've done the action, create PO. It opens up a new window, which is a grid. Actually, it's a table. And if I open this up, although I don't have any vendor comments, we can see a list of the items, and the vendor is listed below. So if we look at the top, we have E100, and then we have the vendor computer warehouse, which the vendor has an ID of 1011. So each of these items looks like we have single vendors for most or all. So I don't have a multi-vendor example, but if I did have multiple vendors, they would be listed, and I could choose which vendor I wanted to buy from. Additionally, if I was to use multiple locations at once, I could see the inventory for each location, and I could issue POs by location. So I could issue essentially 2 POs per item. I'm going to look at this window and basically select the primary vendor. It's going to fill in the PO quantity column with the reorder quantity that's been specified in my item. So I've already specified that. If I want to, because I know that that quantity, although it's sufficient normally, this is a season where we need more inventory, I can choose to overwrite it. if I needed to, I could edit the price because I know that the price is different and maybe I hadn't updated my item, which I can when I actually go to the PO, or I of course could go to the item, but you can update both. So the simple fact is that you can just go through, make your changes. If everything looks good, you have a total at the top and you hit proceed. We're going to create 6 purchase orders for 20 items to 6 vendors. We click OK, the process completes, and the POs are created. So what I'll do is just to show you where those ended up, we'll click on to the payables tab, which doubles as purchasing because the purchase orders feed into the purchases or the bills, etc. And if I click on my purchase order ledger, I have a view that's called open POs. So these are POs that have been posted and they're sitting there waiting for receivings of inventory. But I have a view that I quickly did beforehand that's just going to show me my unposted POs. And there are all the POs that I just created. So if I drill into any one of these, it's just going to show the data from that PO. And I'll just pick a different one. Here's a bigger one. Maybe there's a lot more items on this. So we can see that that's there. This PO is confirmed already, but we have different options for that where you can choose to password protect confirmations and so on and so forth. So you can put some structure into the purchasing if there's a lot of different folks involved in it. So moving off of the POs, and actually just before we continue, Marilyn, it's probably a good time to do a poll question because I think I completely forgot as we were going through. So maybe we should stop and do that.
Not a problem, Scott. Folks, this is your third of 4 poll questions. When you think about your software or your client's accounting software, which features are important to you? And you can choose more than one. Do you place value that your desktop application have the same features and functionality as the cloud version? Are you looking for something with inventory management, easily exporting data? Lot control of inventory is often difficult and challenging, or maybe for some of you, none of the above are not applicable today. Nice quick responses. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to count you down from 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. I'm closing the poll, and I'm going to share the results. Do you see those, Scott?
Yes, I do.
Perfect.
Okay, well, yeah, that's interesting results. Probably to me, one of the most important ones is the desktop application is the same as the cloud, and that's something that Connected does. And we often hear that if you go to one or the other, they don't sync up, or you can't move back and forth. So you kind of get yourself in a bit of a trap, so to speak. At Connected, we have the desktop application, and our hosted cloud is the same. So that's something that's important, and we can move the data, and you can view it no matter which service you're using of ours. So that's great. Thanks for those results, and we'll just continue on here. So just to quickly touch on one of the pricing mechanisms that we discussed, I'm just going to open up and drill into a customer here. So this is a customer window. This is where we have our customer profile, etc. I just really want to touch on the item info. So this is something that we were talking about where you can have a custom price per customer. So this is totally unique to the account tech customer and our sample data. So this is something we find very popular because there seems to be a lot of, whether it's a negotiated contract or we just have very special needs. So you can fill in those items and those prices here. It supports an import to add and an import to update. So you can do bulk importing to affect the data if you'd like. And again, this does create a custom lookup list when you're doing order entry. So we'll move on and just finish up here with a little discussion on the orders in Connected. So I do have an order. I believe I have it pinned here so it's remembered. So we have an order here. This is an order that I've pre-set up. It's an order that has 2 different SKU numbers, but each of the 2 SKU numbers is being asked for from the client on different dates. So we can see down the required column here that the dates are different. We have October the 20th, November the 4th, and December the 10th, just to lay it out as a sample. These items are all lot serial controlled. So they do have an additional picking operation where we have to put in and specify those lot numbers. And just to confuse things more, it looks like I have this customer in a US currency. So let's just take a look at this. This order's already been edited. So we have the shipped TD, which is the ship to date column. We can see that these are filled in. And then we have down here, we have an order quantity of 70 and 70, and we have the ship now. So we're ready to ship it. We haven't released it, filled in. As soon as we do that, that automatically commits inventory. So if I was to click on this item and go down here, we can see that we have 890 on hand, 20 committed, and our available inventory is always real time based on the commitments. So let's take a look at the shipments tab. This order has already been partially shipped. So we have 3 invoices here on 3 different dates that have been created. And on the left-hand side, for this order, we have the metrics for this order specifically. So if we look at those, we can see what's in the ship now, the quantities, the value, the percentages. We can see the values and quantities to date, the totals. And if you wanted to, you could see a list of all orders and present a lot of these metrics there as well, without the quantity numbers, but you can see the total value. How much value and percentage do we have ready to ship? Because we don't want to ship an order until we hit at least a 50% threshold. So, for example, customers in seasonal businesses, they might take orders over the year and then begin committing inventory over time. They want to release it as soon as they can so they can invoice it, but they don't want to do it until they hit a certain point. So using those metrics can be helpful. If I was to just click on this item, this is a previous shipment, I can just print it to my screen and I'll get a packing slip. So I'm just reprinting that. The packing slip has no pricing information, but for those of you in the survey that answered that they were interested in lot control, well, here's a packing slip that's showing the quantity shipped was 25, and then it's showing the breakdown by lot number. And I broke them down on purpose just to demonstrate that you could pick from 2 different lots, or 3 or 4, for a single shipment, and then show those on your packing slip, and of course the corresponding invoice. If we drill into the invoice, then we open up and we can see that at the top right, we have the invoice number, the packing slip number, and the order number. That order number ties everything together. So as we continually ship against this order, we can tie everything together by that order number. You could tie things together, of course, by customer and so on and so forth, but a lot of times we just want to see how did we do on that big order? Was it worth it? Was it worth taking that and having those multiple release dates? So that's something that might be important as a metric to see from a reporting standpoint. So we'll just do a quick look at the report that ties it together, and then I'll turn it over to Marilyn to maybe ask that next poll question, because I think my time is short. So we'll just do one quick report. This is going to just look at the invoice in detail with this order number selected. I'm going to hit print, and although in our print preview we don't have some of those neat sizing options that we saw from Alan in Excel, we can look at this and we can see the 2 items. We can see 3 different invoices per item. The cost for each item is the same, but you could probably derive, if there was different costs, how you could specifically see the profits. And then we could see the landed sales and profit percentage, and then the profit percentage as it would have been shown if we didn't convert the currency. So this shows some of the complexities of dealing with currencies and calculating your margins based on the fluctuations in rates. And although I didn't change the rates to prepare the demo data, I think the idea is presented. Then you could run this report for an order, for a customer, for a range of items, and really understand where your items are, where you're profiting from. So Marilyn, I'll turn that over to you to do that final poll question.
Thanks, Scott. The last of our 4 polls there, folks, is coming up now. How up to date is your accounting software? Maybe you're on the current latest version, 2 to 4 years old, 4 to 6, over 6 years old, or maybe you're older than that, or you are not in a position to answer that question today. Some people don't even know what version they're on, and that's quite common. We're almost at 90%. Thank you so much for your quick responses. I'm going to count you down from 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. I'm closing that poll and sharing the results. There we go. Well, nearly 50% are on current software. Then that's great. Do you have any final thoughts there?
I'll kind of skip the recap. The slide is here, and just maybe just point out that we are a Canadian-based company, but we do have localized versions of the program for the United States and the United Kingdom. And then one final slide is that we do have a partner program for accountants and bookkeepers. It's a very very easy one to join. It's basically free, and essentially we're just looking to match our solution with a client that it fits for, and we can offer a 15% referral on the software sale, or you can pass that on to your client. We offer online courses that you can get to learn more about our program, and we do those similar to this venue today, where we offer verified PD credits, and you can learn more about those at our website if you'd like to check that out. And that's all, folks. So thank you very much. If you want to visit our website, it's www.accounttech.com. I'll turn it over to you, Marilyn. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. That was really great. Nice to see a software product that's a choice for folks who are outgrowing their entry-level product. So,
great, Scott. I really enjoyed that presentation. As Marilyn said, I'm getting questions all the time about I've outgrown the desktop, the entry-level products. Where do I go? And certainly Account Tech is in that market above there. So before we end, K2 also has some paid webinars, and the one relevant to the free one that I did today is our financial reporting and analysis. And when you get the recording of this webinar, the link to join this one will be there. So Scott, I want to thank you, and Marilyn, and I want to thank all of the attendees today. I hope I will see you in 2 weeks. It's a wrap.